Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into one of the most pressing challenges of our time, really. We're talking about accelerating environmental degradation and, maybe even more alarming, the decline of biodiversity across the planet.
It's a huge problem, absolutely. But what's fascinating, I think, is how people are looking to, well, innovative technologies for potential solutions.
Exactly. And that brings us right to our main topic today.
Blockchain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, blockchain still means Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Cryptocurrencies, this sort of complex, decentralized ledger thing, mainly for finance.
You're right, finance.
But its potential, its real core innovation, it goes way beyond just currency. We're talking about transparency, immutability, trust. And that's precisely why it's starting to pop up in a really unexpected place, environmental conservation, specifically helping protect biodiversity.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. Can blockchain actually make a real, tangible difference in conservation? We're going to focus on three sort of key areas. First up, tracking wildlife products. How could it change that?
Second, monitoring land use and protecting habitats. Can it bring more clarity there?
Yeah, big one.
And finally, conservation funding, which, let's be honest, can be a bit of a maze sometimes. How could blockchain help manage that?
Sounds like a plan. Three really critical areas.
All right, let's get into it. Let's start with maybe the grimmest challenge, the illegal wildlife trade. I mean, trying to unravel that network.
Yeah,
Poachers, traffickers, crossing continents, it's horrific.
it really is. And it's a massive industry, billions of dollars, pushing so many species towards extinction.
The scale is just staggering. And a huge part of the problem is just figuring out where these products even come from. You've got weak enforcement, corruption, supply chains that are deliberately, murky.
And this is where blockchain's potential really comes into play. Cutting through that opacity, it lets you create records that are immutable, meaning they can't be changed, easily transparent, and tamper-proof.
Okay, so how does that work in practice?
Yeah.
Like step by step?
Imagine tracing, say, a crocodile skin from a certified sustainable farm, maybe, all the way through processing, shipping, to the final leather product in a shop. And you can make this even stronger by integrating it with other tech. Think IoT sensors, logging conditions, RFID tags on the products themselves, even DNA barcoding to prove the species and origin.
So layering technologies.
Exactly. Layering them onto the blockchain record. It creates this really robust system, leaves very little room for fraud or mixing illegal products with legal ones.
What seems really interesting there is how it shifts things. It's not just about catching the bad guys after the fact. It sounds like it empowers consumers, maybe.
That's a key part of it. Building consumer trust through verified sourcing.
So could blockchain actually help create a market for ethical wildlife products and sort of prove they're legitimate?
That's the goal, yes. If consumers can easily verify the provenance, the origin, they can choose ethically sourced goods. They sort of vote with their wallets. And we've seen similar things happen. Look at the WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. They partnered with a group called OpenSea.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them. For seafood.
Seafood, palm oil, using blockchain to track those supply chains. It showed these digital tools can work in conservation-related sectors. Applying that same logic to wildlife products could really tighten things up, make it much harder for illegal items to slip through.
It sounds incredibly promising. It really does. But, the illegal wildlife trade is so complex, so underground. Is transparency enough? What are the practical roadblocks, especially when you're talking about working in really remote areas?
That's a very fair point and a huge challenge. Many conservation hotspots lack basic tech infrastructure, no stable internet, maybe no reliable electricity.
Right. Fundamental stuff.
Exactly. How do you even get the data onto the blockchain reliably in the first place? And then there's the classic garbage in, garbage out problem,
Yeah.
meaning if the initial data entered is wrong or deliberately faked at the source, while the blockchain will faithfully record that bad data, its immutability doesn't fix flawed input.
Okay. So the test relies heavily on trustworthy data entry at the very beginning.
Absolutely critical. And finally, we can't just rely solely on digital tools, especially where corruption is, deeply embedded. Technology helps, but it won't magically solve those systemic human issues.
That's a really crucial reminder. Technology isn't a magic wand. And that point about opacity and, frankly, corruption, it leads us nicely into the next big area, monitoring land use. Because just like with wildlife trade, knowing what's actually happening on the ground is vital.
Definitely.
Land use change, we're talking deforestation,
Yeah.
agriculture expanding. That's the #1 driver of biodiversity loss worldwide. And conservation efforts often get stuck because there's just no good, reliable data on how land is being used or if protected areas are actually being protected.
And again, this is where blockchain's ability to create transparent, unchangeable records can be, well, really powerful. Think about creating solid, hard-to-dispute records for who owns land, what rights they have to use it, and any conservation agreements tied to it.
Okay, land titles on the blockchain. I can see that. How does that connect to, say, stopping illegal logging?
Well, imagine combining those blockchain land records with satellite imagery and maybe even AI analysis. You could potentially track land use changes almost in real time. Spot illegal logging or farming encroaching on protected areas much faster than before.
That real-time aspect feels like a game changer. And what about things like conservation easements? Those agreements where landowners agree not to develop.
Yeah, blockchain could help verify compliance. Is that agreement actually being followed? The record is there, transparently.
And you mentioned indigenous land rights earlier. That's often a huge point of conflict and injustice. How could blockchain help there?
It could provide a really strong, verifiable record for indigenous communities' land claims. Documenting them immutably on a blockchain could strengthen their legal standing against encroachment, which is a massive global problem.
Wow, okay. That's potentially very impactful. And you also mentioned carbon credits, biodiversity credits.
Right. Blockchain can help ensure these credits, which are essentially digital tokens representing environmental value, are genuinely tied to real, verified conservation actions on the ground. It helps prevent things like double counting credits or selling fraudulent ones, adds a layer of integrity.
Are there examples of this kind of land registry on blockchain happening already?
There are, yeah. Maybe not directly for conservation on a massive scale yet, but countries like Georgia and Sweden have been using blockchain for their national land registries.
Go for it.
To reduce fraud, cut down on paperwork, make things more efficient. You can see how applying that same model could really support conservation land trusts or community-managed conservation areas, bring that same efficiency and transparency.
It sounds powerful, definitely. But again, the practical side, what are the big hurdles to actually implementing this for a country or even just a local conservation group?
Well, first off, it's resource intensive. You need significant investment in the technology itself, but also in training people to use it.
Money and expertise.
Exactly. And often it requires legal reforms. Governments need to recognize blockchain-based titles, for instance. Getting that governmental buy-in and cooperation, that can be a major challenge, especially in some places.
And I imagine there are risks if it's not done carefully.
Absolutely. There's a real risk of marginalizing local communities if the implementation isn't truly inclusive. If you digitize land records without properly recognizing or incorporating traditional or communal ownership rights, you could actually end up dispossessing people,
Right.
which is, the exact opposite of what conservation should be about.
That's a critical ethical minefield to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's shift to our third area. Managing conservation funding. This feels like another area where trust and transparency are just perennial issues.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Plagues so many well-meaning conservation projects. You often hear about lack of transparency, money getting lost in the system, inefficiencies, sometimes outright corruption.
Yeah, and donors, whether individuals giving small amounts or big institutions, they struggle, right? How do they know their money is actually getting to the field, doing good, achieving results? It often feels like a black box.
It really can, and this is where blockchain, especially using something called smart contracts, looks really promising.
Start contracts. Okay, break that down. What are they exactly?
To think of them as self-executing contracts. The rules of the agreement say releasing funds when a certain conservation milestone is met are written directly into computer code on the blockchain, so they can automate payments and make the whole process transparent.
Okay, so conditional payments based on results. That sounds revolutionary for accountability.
It could be. Donors aren't just throwing money over a wall and hoping for the best. They're funding verifiable outcomes.
And you can see how that builds trust, right? It could also cut out some of the middlemen, maybe make funding more efficient.
Potentially, yes. Reduce administrative overhead. And imagine enabling microdonations where even small donors can track exactly where their contribution went and what it achieved.
Real-time auditing, essentially.
Yeah.
That would be huge for donor confidence.
Huge. And platforms are already doing this in the broader charity space. Things like Giveth or Impact Ledger let users track donations on the blockchain. Applying that model directly to conservation NGOs could really change the game. Reassure donors their money isn't getting lost or misused.
It sounds like a really powerful tool for accountability.
Right.
But again, the but. What are the limitations or the risks here?
Well, technical expertise is a big one.
Right. Not every small NGO has blockchain coders on staff.
Exactly. And donors might not understand it either. Plus, those smart contracts, they need to be coded very carefully. Any bug or vulnerability in the code could be exploited, leading to lost funds or the system not working as intended. Security is paramount.
So coding errors could be disastrous.
Potentially, yes. And finally, like the other applications, it might not be feasible everywhere. You still need the basic digital infrastructure and connectivity for it to work. It's not a universal fix.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We've looked at wildlife tracking, land use, funding. Blockchain clearly has some really exciting potential in all these areas. But, and this seems to be the recurring theme, it is definitely not a silver bullet, is it?
Not at all. It's so tempting to look for that one technological fix, but reality is always more complex. Blockchain's effectiveness really hinges on how well it's integrated with other tech AI, mapping tools like GIS, those IoT sensors we talked about.
So it's part of an ecosystem of tools.
Precisely. But even beyond the tech, it absolutely needs strong institutional support, clear rules, regulations, and crucially, it needs to be genuinely community-driven. It has to involve and benefit the people on the ground.
Without that human element, that local buy-in, it's just code running somewhere.
Exactly. It won't achieve lasting conservation impact on its own.
So to recap,
Yeah.
it could seriously boost transparency, build trust, improve efficiency in tracking, land management, funding, all critical things. But the deployment, that needs real care, doesn't it?
Immense care. It has to be deployed cautiously, inclusively, with really strong ethical guidelines and governance structures in place. It's a powerful tool, and like any powerful tool, how you use it determines whether the outcome is good or bad.
So the big takeaway is kind of a yes, but scenario. Yes, blockchain could be a game changer for biodiversity.
But only if it's part of a much broader strategy, a well-coordinated toolkit.
Right. Success isn't just about the tech innovation. It needs that cross-sector collaboration, policy support from governments, and real focus on social equity for the communities involved.
Yeah, the core message really is that technology alone won't save biodiversity. It needs a whole confluence of efforts.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to think about. How do we best strike that balance between harnessing the power of these incredible new technologies like blockchain?
And nurturing those essential human elements: collaboration, sensible policy, fairness, local knowledge, social equity. Maybe finding that balance, that sweet spot, perhaps that's the real key to unlocking meaningful, lasting change for our planet's biodiversity.